Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. I want you to picture something for me. Imagine a mist-covered battlefield, but it's completely still. No clashing swords, no roaring cannons, just that incredibly quiet, tense breath right before an arrow is released. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating guide built specifically for fiction writers and world builders. We're going to look at how to craft some seriously compelling narratives using the 14th spirit of the Ars Goetia, Leraje, the great Marquis of Battles, Arrows, and Wounded Glory. If you're a writer wanting to inject deeply atmospheric, festering conflict into your series, well, you are in the exact right place. Let's get into it.
To instantly grasp the specific, chilling vibe Leraje brings to a story, just listen to this opening passage from our source material. Really let this set the stage for you. The arrow arrived before the army. It struck the council table without sound, splitting the map exactly along the border no king had dared to name. Its feathers were green, its shaft was clean, no blood marked the iron head. Yet every old wound in the room began to ache as if the war had already started. Wow, right? That right there is a masterclass in atmosphere. It's not about the loud, messy collision of armies. It's all about that invisible, silent threat of a precisely targeted green-feathered arrow waking up old hatreds.
Now, to really ground Leraje before we start adapting him, we have to look at his actual occult origins. Traditionally, Leraje, and you might see it spelled Leraye or Leraikha, is officially recognized as the 14th spirit in the Ars Goetia tradition, famously catalogued by Mathers and Crowley. He holds the heavy-hitting rank of a great marquis, commanding 30 legions. Visually, he's traditionally documented as an archer dressed in green, carrying a bow and quiver, and his primary associations: battles, contests, archery, and, this is absolutely crucial, wounds, specifically poisoned or festering injuries. Knowing this foundation is essential for us as writers because, well, you gotta know the rules before you bend them, right? So how do we transition those raw facts into storytelling gold? Let's compare. In his traditional folklore roots, he's painted as a literal demon of physical arrows and battlefield pursuit. But when we bring him into modern literary fiction, he transforms into this incredibly powerful symbol of indirect aggression. Think about it. A sword requires you to be up close and personal, but an arrow? An arrow lets you do harm from a distance. Because of this, Leraje embodies political plots, assassination attempts, poison messages, nasty rumors, and those deep inherited grudges. He is literally the perfect entity to pull out when a character refuses to face the damage directly, letting an arrow do all the dirty work from the shadows.
What this means for fiction is that Leraje isn't just your run-of-the-mill generic demon of war. He is the demon of the arrow after it has left the string. I really want you to think about what that means for your characters. It represents the irrevocable decision, that one choice that absolutely cannot be taken back. It's the rivalry that suddenly turns fatal, or that casual offhand insult that just spirals into a generation-long feud. He doesn't represent the chaotic noise of the battlefield itself. No, he represents that single, precise, fatal choice that sets off a cascade of devastating consequences.
Okay, so when it comes to actually writing him into a scene, visual impact is everything. If you're describing Leraje or even just his influence over a scene, rely heavily on this specific color palette. Deep forest green, iron gray, bone white, maybe throw in some muted gold and blood red accents. That green clothing can represent camouflage, the wildness of nature, or even just pure envy. Picture him as a silent archer standing at the very edge of a mist-covered battlefield, surrounded by rotting banners and old arrows sprouting from the mud like dead branches. You want your readers to physically feel that quiet, fatal tension in the room. The atmosphere shouldn't feel like a loud action movie. It needs to feel exactly like the tense breath right before the release.
And that stark visual translates beautifully into his personality.
Our guide frames it perfectly right here. He studies weakness, waits for the right distance, and releases one perfect shot. Leraje is calm, he's incredibly watchful, and he's exact. He absolutely does not need to shout to command a room. In fact, he despises meaningless noise. Wasted motion, he hates it. While he might admire discipline and, the terrible beauty of combat, he heavily favors a disciplined, silent rivalry over some chaotic, messy brawl. When you're writing his character, contrast him against your typical loud, boastful warlord. Leraje is the guy standing completely quiet in the corner, calculating exactly where your protagonist is most vulnerable. So when it actually comes to dialogue on the page, Lerage's speech should be short, sharp, and highly visual. Think of it as the vocabulary of the hunter. He shouldn't sound like a general barking orders to a massive troop. He needs to sound like a solitary hunter who already knows exactly where his prey is going to run. Have him speak in terms of aim, distance, wind, and silence. Let him muse on targets, honor, and consequence. Every single word he speaks should feel as calculated and precise as an arrow being notched to a bowstring. No fluff.
Now, let's look at how this builds thematic escalation in a broader series. Our source material frames Leraje within a sequence of spirits, specifically placing him right after the 13th spirit, Beleth. Now, Beleth is all about love and emotional command, turning love into authority. Leraje arrives immediately after with this incredibly powerful thematic contrast. He takes Beleth's private emotional domains and transitions them straight into public martial catastrophes. Beleth announces love like a grand royal procession, but Leraje answers with the silence of an arrow. Together, they perfectly illustrate how a rejected lover becomes a rival house, or how a broken vow turns into a bloody duel. It is quite literally a masterclass in escalating your narrative stakes.
There's this one really evocative concept here that I think captures his deepest literary meaning better than anything else. The wound that refuses to heal because pride keeps reopening it. He is the absolute spirit of festering consequences. Now, in traditional lore, he's associated with poisoned wounds. But for S's writers, that poison isn't chemical, it's emotional. The injuries he inflicts or the conflicts he oversees are infected by inherited hatred and the bitter memory of old insults. He thrives when people believe conflict is just inevitable, when one single moment of stubborn pride spreads through generations like a disease.
All right, to make this super practical for you, here are 3 highly specific, actionable plot hooks pulled straight from our source material that you can drop directly into your story or campaign today. Hook 1. A royal tournament begins as mere entertainment, but every arrow fired slowly awakens a forgotten bloody feud. Hook 2. An assassin never misses, but each victim survives just long enough to accuse the wrong person, spreading war through carefully aimed suspicion. And Hook 3. 2 noble houses finally agree to end their conflict. But just as the peace is signed, a single arrow lands right between them, with both family crests carved into the shaft. I mean, come on. Those are fantastic setups where characters are just trapped by public reputation and wounded pride.
Which brings us to our final, compelling question, and honestly, the secret key to defeating this spirit in your narrative. See, Leraje has a core weakness: reconciliation before the arrow is released. He is entirely broken by characters who refuse provocation, who expose hidden manipulation, and who are willing to do the absolute hardest thing possible. So ask yourself as you write, will your characters choose mercy at the exact moment pride demands retaliation? Because that is how you beat Leraje. I really hope this explainer helps you weave some masterful, tense, and deeply consequential conflicts into your writing. Keep asking those hard questions of your characters, and happy writing.